The 2025 NBA draft has come and gone, and what a statement Duke basketball made once again. The entire starting five set to start their professional careers in the association.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thanks so much for being here with us today on Monday, June 30th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your daily one-stop shop for everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. And here we are. We have made it to the final day of June, and we've got a lot to dive into here on today's show as we're going to recap the 2025 NBA draft from a Duke perspective once again with our pal Raul Clement from the Devil's Den podcast. Excited to hear his thoughts on the landing spots for the five Duke players that get a chance now to start their careers in the NBA. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating and written review. You can like this video, share it with your friends as we're continuing to grow our audience here within the world of Locked On Blue Devils. Excited to continue conversations and make sure that you're a part of the journey. Shout out to all of our everydayers out there who make us a part of your routine each and every day. So without further ado, let me bring him on into today's program. The aforementioned Raul Clement is here with us now, and he joins us on the show. How you doing, man? Good to see you, Raul.
Good, man. Just dealing with the summer, dealing with the heat, the boredom of not having any basketball. The NBA playoffs obviously just finished, so really nothing going on besides the draft, which happened last week. So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We've got the draft. We'll see NBA free agency get started today, and then we've got Summer League coming. But again, not the high-level competitive basketball that we love. Hopefully we get more kind of workout footage from the Duke basketball summer team and workouts that take place there on campus so that we can get some things to discuss. But before we get into any of that, we got to talk about this 2025 draft that came and went, and we saw the Duke Blue Devils have 5 players selected. I just want to start big picture, man. The fact that we are able to say the entire starting 5 now gets the opportunity to start their draft. I mean, that just does not happen often, my friend.
Yeah, and, it's one of the few times in history that 3 players from one school have gone in the top 10. Obviously, that happened in 2019 with Duke. It happened with UK, whatever year that was, maybe 2015, I think. And then it happened with Florida the year that they went back-to-back and won the national championship in 2007. And I think that might have been it. So pretty rare accomplishment and just really cool to see.
I mean, when you're getting top-level players that perform as well as they do throughout the course of the year, and then their ultimate goal is to win the national championship and play good college basketball in hopes that that leads them to that professional opportunity. And that's exactly what happened for the Duke team, that these guys are now able to kind of start their professional careers and their professional journeys. Cooper Flagg was a name that we talked about for many years leading up to his commitment to Duke. And then the one season that we had, it felt like he could be this number 1 pick. That ended up happening. He's number 1 in the NBA draft and heading off to the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, no real surprise there, right? It was kind of known that he was going to be the number 1 pick the minute he reclassified, which was obviously before he even announced that he was coming to Duke. So we've known for well over a year that he was going to be the number 1 pick. The big surprise there, obviously, was that Dallas, of all teams, got the number 1 pick after trading Luka, and they had like a 3% chance, I think, of landing it. So, really fortunate for them, and it'll be interesting to see how he fits there. Obviously, Kyrie Irving is going to be out for the season, probably. I expect at least. They're low on guards, so Cooper might have a chance to do a little bit more ball handling than he would normally have to do on like a team of that caliber.
Without a doubt. Yeah, Kyrie, again, that torn left ACL back in March, so we'll see the timetable for him to return. But really cool to see Cooper Flagg be able to link up with a couple of Blue Devils in Kyrie Irving and in Derek Lively II. Both Cooper Flagg and Kyrie were at a Dallas Wings WNBA game just a few days ago and got a good video of some former number 1 overall picks who played at Duke together, and we'll see more of them on the floor together and that sort of thing. You mentioned kind of the surprise being more so that Dallas is the team that selected him as opposed to Cooper being number one, that surprise. I think as we look back at the year, though, what was so interesting to me is going into the season, there was Cooper Flagg as the number one player in the country, and many people believe he's going to be this top pick. But right behind him were the two Rutgers guys, and Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. What was pretty crazy to see unfold, Raul, is that throughout the course of the year, and really over the last 2 months or so, when the draft process really ramped up, it became such a separation, right? I mean, it really is not every year that you see something like this. There are years that it gets to the final 2 weeks, final week, final few days before a team makes the decision who they're going to select. It was just so much separation between Cooper and really the rest of the top of the class.
Yeah, I mean, just to your point, the 2024 draft, it wasn't really known who was going to go first, until the minute that pick was made. Same thing with 2022 when Paolo went first, right? People were talking about Jabari Smith maybe as being the number one pick. So it is pretty unusual. You see it maybe like once every 4 or 5 years, I would say. You saw it with Zion. You saw it with Wemby, of course. You saw it with Anthony Davis. So it's kind of, 4 to 5, 7 years even. Sometimes there's a gap. But yeah, he just clearly separated himself as the season went on. He started maybe a little bit slowly in terms of his efficiency. The 3-point shot took maybe a month or two to come around. But once we got into ACC play, you saw him shooting 40% plus from three. You saw him scoring efficiently at the rim, knocking down his free throws. He led Duke in every statistical category. And Duke had a lot of success, and I think that factored in there too, right? Rutgers didn't even make the tournament, despite having 2 lottery picks.
Yeah, I think a lot about that. I think about, hey, we've got this guy who throughout the year, it was easy to kind of monitor that he led Duke in every statistical category, like you just said, Raul. But I need more people to tell me that so I can remind myself just how dominant he was. And it's a Duke basketball team that went to the Final Four, that finished 35-4. Their ACC, it's not like this terrible team where we've got the best player and, of course, he's going to do everything. It was a great team, and the best player led him in everything.
Yeah, you really don't see that often. I haven't done my research on how often that even happens in college, but I can't really think of any examples.
It can't be often. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, Grant Hill was probably close, but I'm guessing he didn't lead the team in rebounding.
Sure.
He probably led in assists and scoring and steals and stuff like that. But, that's like a Jokic-like stat line, right? That kind of overall impact that you just don't expect to see in college is more of an NBA superstar kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, and then you mentioned it, the defensive end of the floor. You got the steals, you got the blocks. I mean, everything Cooper Flagg was able to do at impact winning in so many ways. All right, we're due for our first break here on the program today. When we come back, we'll continue to move through this NBA draft and discuss a few more notes when Locked On Blue Devils continues here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make your game even more exciting. You're always already following the action. Why not make it more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. If you're new to FanDuel, you can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Once again, FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, let's keep this thing going. We've got Raul Clement, there from the Devil's Den podcast, joining us here on Locked On Blue Devils, and we're talking about Duke in the NBA draft. Cooper Flagg goes number 1 to Dallas, and then we're seeing the rest of the top 5 unfold, and we're wondering, is there any world in which Kon Knueppel can be a top 5 selection? We don't have to wait long. He goes 4th to the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I wasn't all that surprised because I had been following, tweets and stuff and mock drafts leading up to the draft, and you'd seen Kon kind of getting more and more buzz, similar to what happened to him, honestly, over the summer before he had his first year at Duke. Just that kind of accumulation of buzz and hype around him. I think he did really well, and he measured surprisingly well at the combine. Like, I had a really great run time, surprisingly great vertical. He's obviously, known to be a great shooter already. And then I'm sure he interviews well as well. So I'm sure all that factored in. And, Charlotte there, I think, went with probably the safer pick over Ace Bailey, right? Ace Bailey's got some question marks the way his team is handling some stuff. He might have a higher upside than Kon, but Kon has a really high floor, I think. And, he does have a high upside as well. I don't mean to dismiss him that way, but yeah, it's just a great, cool situation for him. He gets to stay in state, right? He's already been in school here for a year. So there's going to be plenty of local fans who will come to see him. And then he gets to play with his former teammate, Sion, as well. So cool stuff.
It's crazy to think about what this draft class has ended up being for Duke, that they do have the 2 top 5 picks, and Kon Knueppel is that guy for the Blue Devils, not somebody like Khaman Maluach, right? And I only say that to say, or because, you go back to a year ago, no one expected Knueppel to be in this situation. We didn't really know what his playing time would kind of look like for Duke basketball. And here, all of a sudden, he's a top 5 pick. It's just crazy, man. We talked about this year, Cooper Flagg creating that separation between himself and the rest of the projects or prospects. How about the year for Kon Knueppel, going from not really on a draft radar to, top 5 pick in the NBA?
Yeah, I remember talking with various guests we had on and pundits, and there was some uncertainty about whether Kon would even start, right? It was like maybe it'd be Isaiah Evans. Brian Geisinger even mentioned Darren Harris as a possibility. And it was kind of up in the air, that third position there, right? So to see him sort of assert himself as the second best player on the team, I think, by the end of the season, especially. You think about what he did in the ACC tournament. His scoring averages just went through the roof with a flag out, right? And his assist rate doubled, and he was getting to the line a ton, and his efficiency was off the charts. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember during the ACC tournament, I think he was averaging 25 points a game and 5 assists, 5 rebounds, just, 50, 40, 90 kind of splits. So I thought in ways he was actually our best offensive player for just the last month. Now, not our best overall player, that was Cooper, but the best offensive player from February on, possibly. There's an argument for that, at least.
Undoubtedly there is. And super, super fired up for what Kon Knueppel did throughout the course of the year and earning himself this top 5 opportunity. He gets to play for the Hornets. So many people in the state obviously like watching the Hornets play, and you've got more Duke connections on their roster, with Kon Knueppel being one of those guys. Again, he played so well in the ACC tournament, like you mentioned, in the Spectrum Center, where the Hornets play their home games. Hopefully he can carry some of that good vibes into his professional career to get started. All right, another top 10 pick for Duke. Maluach goes 10th, and he's going to ultimately end up with the Phoenix Suns. So many crazy draft day moves and whatnot. So not as much on the fit here, but just the fact that Maluach is a top 10 player after the season he had at Duke. I love it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just a great story for him, right? He starts playing basketball 5 or 6 years ago, just gets discovered off the street, ends up coming, all the way overseas to America, playing at one of the most prestigious schools in the country, ends up as a top 10 draft pick. Despite being a fairly raw player, he made a huge impact on Duke this year. You saw his ascendancy throughout the season, right? Early in the season, Malik Brown was playing more minutes than him, and he was starting.
Sure.
And then Khaman slowly kind of just figures it out. He becomes this amazing lob threat, shot over 70% from the field, had some monster games, was able to protect the rim as well as kind of defend out in space, switch out on guards, had a huge impact in that regard, and just his presence as a rolling big man, I thought was huge for other guys on the team. Like Cooper and Kon had great chemistry with him and were really able to thrive because of his presence on the team.
Undoubtedly. Just him making that impact at the rim, let everybody else play more freely on the defensive end of the floor, knowing that if I get beat, I've got somebody that's going to be able to clean it up there at the end. And I think about even the offensive element, right? A lob threat, 83 dunks is an incredible number throughout the course of a college season, and that's what Maluach finished with. And he's got the outside shooting stroke, right? I mean, he went 4 of 16 on the year, 25%. Not the greatest percentage, but we know he can make them. You could see how well he shot free throws. And so, yeah, if you're an NBA team, you got to love what you like when you kind of evaluate him as a prospect. And I would remind people that, the fit within Duke kind of limited those looks that Maluach was getting this season, right? Like Duke didn't need Khaman to sit out there and knock down shots from the outside. If that had been more of a focal point, I firmly believe he would have been in more of a rhythm and that percentage would have gone up throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, Duke had a ton of shooters this last season, right? So
what's the need of him being out there too?
Right. It's clearly not Duke's best option, right? Like, you would see it sometimes just when he was left completely open. He had the ball at the top of the key, especially when we were up 20 or something. It's like, okay, I might as well take this,
fly.
right? Yeah. And, to Shire's credit, he told Khaman and he told Malik, shoot it if you're open. But again, I think they understood their role and they understood it's better to get, a shot from Tyrese or Kon here. If somebody's shooting a 3, it's going to be one of those guys, or even Sion in the corner was very efficient. Cooper, obviously, as well, just up and down the board. Evans is a huge one, of course, flying off screens.
Yep.
So I just named 5 guys that you would probably prefer to take a 3-point shot over Khaman. But to your point, I do think he has the potential to develop that. And I think that's part of the reason he's intriguing to NBA teams, because that's a kind of like mythical unicorn piece, right? Like if you can find a guy who can hit threes at decent volume while protecting the rim and grabbing rebounds, that's incredibly valuable to a team. I mean, Giannis and the Bucks won that title on the back of having a guy like that in Brook Lopez, who was able to open up the floor for Giannis.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the eventual kind of, I guess, best case scenario for Khaman would be to develop into like a Brook Lopez type.
Yeah, and now you've got him in Phoenix out on the West Coast. Mark Williams is there as well. So they've got a Duke-heavy front court. Mason Plumlee played on the team a year ago. I mean, Duke's all over the place, not to mention Tyus Jones and Grayson Allen.
Yeah, Grayson will probably still be there unless they trade him. We'll see.
Yeah, so there's a ton of Duke flavor there out in Phoenix for the upcoming year. All right, we're due for one more timeout here on the program today. I want to talk about the last 2 guys. 5 guys drafted, so we still got to highlight Sion James and Tyrese Proctor, and we'll do that when Locked On Blue Devils continues in a moment. That's right. Thank you so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen or your first watch here today. For your second listen, make sure that you check out the Portal Show. Locked On's very own Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. Also, check out Locked On College Basketball with hosts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. They do a remarkable job telling you everything that you need to know about college hoops, with tons of Duke basketball chatter as well. So go check that out after today's show comes to a close. Again, shout out to all the everydayers out there. We're due for another Mailbag Monday next week. So go ahead and send us any questions that you may have down here on YouTube comments. Let us know if you're an everydayer, and we'd love to give you a shout out here on the program. Subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, here he is. Raul Clement is back with us on the program. We're talking about the NBA draft and a couple of more guys to highlight. 3 go in the first round, 2 more go in the second round. Sion James is headed off to the Charlotte Hornets to play with Kon Knueppel, so they'll get to go through the rookie experience together, which is awesome. Sion went very early there in the second round, the 3rd pick of the second round at number 33. That was really cool to see, man.
Yeah, there was some thought heading into Wednesday night or I guess it would have been Thursday night because that was the second day, that he could, slip down into the 40s or so, right? I was pretty confident he was going to get drafted just because of his overall skill set, his defensive ability, his strength. I thought an NBA team would see all that and be, his personality as well too, would see all that and be interested in him. But I was guessing he'd go more like, 40, 45. So to see
Yeah.
him go 33 was just awesome. And it's just a testament to how he was able to thrive at Duke, fit into a system, fill a role, which is really when teams are drafting in the second round, that's what they're looking for. A guy who can fit a role, right? And I think he really upped his stock by doing that on the biggest stage at Duke, versus staying at a place like Tulane and kind of being under the radar.
Yeah, and you're able to play on the national stage in the spotlight. He talked about, I didn't have NCAA tournament experience at Tulane. Let me go to Duke and acquire some of that. And he did. He was a big reason why Duke was able to go all the way to the Final Four. And now you kind of look at the Hornets and what their situation looks like in the backcourt there. Now they've got Kon Knueppel. They've got LaMelo Ball, who's so often injured throughout the course of his career, and some other players that maybe there is an opportunity for Sion to earn some playing opportunities. They drafted Liam McNeely as well. So the Hornets kind of a youth movement here in recent memory, and hopefully Sion's able to make an impact to be a big part of that, right?
Yeah, and they just traded for Colin Sexton, sending out Yusuf Nurkic, so they get even younger there. They have Trey Mann, who they picked up last year.
Yeah.
So a lot of young guards, obviously. So there's going to be some competition. But like you mentioned, LaMelo tends to miss 40 games a year, unfortunately. So that'll probably open up some stuff. I was looking at their roster from last year, and they played 30 guys throughout the course of the season, right? So that's crazy. A roster is 15 guys. So, normally you would expect an NBA team to have a few injuries, play maybe 22, 25 guys, but to be up over 30 is just, nuts. So if history is any indication, I think there's going to be some time that opens up for Sion, especially later in the season. I could see him, being a little bit out of the rotation early, but then by February or March, getting some serious minutes.
Without a doubt. And hopefully he's ready for that opportunity. The Hornets also this past year had, Seth Curry and Wendell Moore Jr., Mark Williams, like we said, before he was traded recently to the Suns. So Charlotte certainly has had Duke greats over the years, and now they've got a pair of them that are going to be on the squad this upcoming season. All right, finally, last but not least, Tyrese Proctor goes 49th to the Cleveland Cavaliers. A lot of people kind of surprised by how much he fell off a little bit there in the draft. Picked right before the 50s, but still a top 50 pick. Sounds like he's going into a guaranteed contract opportunity with Cleveland, which is unbelievable. This was a team that was number one in the Eastern Conference this year, and Proctor gets an opportunity to join them.
Yeah, they won 64 games last year. For him to get to go into a situation like that and get a guaranteed contract, which is certainly not something you necessarily expect when you're getting drafted 49th.
Not the norm.
To hear that news like right away on draft night that he's expected to get a guaranteed deal, which is awesome, and the fact that he gets to play on a great rotation with a great coach like Kenny Atkinson, who's terrific at development, and he's also terrific at, sort of seeing what players do well and making the most out of that. I just think it's an awesome opportunity for him. I wouldn't expect him to play heavy minutes. You think about who's in front of him, right? Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are going to take the bulk of those minutes if they're healthy.
Sure.
They just traded for Lonzo Ball as well. So he's got a lot of vets in front of him. But I do think that there's an opportunity there for him to do the things he does well. Defend on the ball, right? Garland and Mitchell aren't necessarily the best on-ball defenders, so he could help out a little bit there. And then every NBA team can always use that kind of movement shooting you get from Tyrese. So yeah, I'm really happy for him, and I think there's no shame in going 49th, right? It's like, especially if you're walking into a good situation. In ways, it might be better than getting drafted higher into a bad situation.
And you're drafted at the end of the day, right? Sometimes you get to the end and you could kind of pick your destination, but I think everybody would rather be drafted than have to go the undrafted route and kind of the things that go with that. So it paid off. 5 players selected in the NBA draft for Duke. Truly unbelievable. Really excited we were able to see a Final Four team. Obviously, everyone wanted to go just a couple of steps further and win the whole thing. But looking back, I think we're going to be able to remember the success of this team. And now you've got this draft process and results that played out with 5 of those guys being selected. Raul, it was really fun having this conversation with you today, my friend. Tell us about the Devil's Den podcast.
Yeah, the Devil's Den podcast, we're doing like 1 episode a week, maybe 1 episode every 10 days during the summer. During the year, we'll pick it back up and do 2 episodes a week, kind of cover all the games, live reactions, that kind of stuff. We recently started doing YouTube, so we've joined the likes of you guys with having our faces on YouTube. So if you really want to see us for some reason, you can go check us out at thedevilsden.com on YouTube. Just search that. Or you can find us on thedevilsden.com if you just want to listen to the audio version of the podcast. Obviously, that's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that as well. Yeah, Perfect. So just keep an eye out for what we're doing because we're going to have some great guests on over the course of the summer. Yeah.
We'll do this again soon, all right?
Yep.
All right, that's Raul Clement joining us here on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to do it for our show here today. Thank you so much for your support. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and wherever it is that you get your podcasts. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.